Hello. Today is called Let It Flow, Bleeds, Shading and Other Joys of the Watercolor Medium. So another thing we're going to play with today is our non-existent drawing skills that a lot of us would like to say, oh, I can't even draw a stick figure. So we're going to make some stick figures and we're going to paint them. And we will show you that maybe you do know how to draw more than you think. All right. Earlier, I was playing with this kind of a no-draw. We're going to do a little bit of a house that ended up being in the snow in the evening. And in order to create these squares and also that moon, I was actually using some stickers. Just some of them are very old, I have discovered. Your paper might eat these up. You're going to have to just test it to see. And if you have fresher stickers, it might work even all the better. Excuse me. So, I found these rectangle stickers and thought, well, let's make a little building out in the snow, and we're going to block off our little areas just for our. You can have round sticker windows if you want to. So, might as well go to the overhead and we'll look at that. Okay, I will put that. I know some of you like to see what I'm looking at. All right, so I am going to, these rectangles are really, really old. So we'll see if they work. They seem to work okay enough on that. So if you have fresher stickers, they might go on or come off easier, or they might never come off. As you can see, I'm not being too focused on, do I have them all in this, right, this and that, and I'm just playing. So, and we're going to make it up as we go along. And I suppose I could have waited till I had actually drawn my little house before I put that sticker. Optional. All right, I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to draw darker in hopes that you can see what I'm doing. Now, maybe even for making your life easier, we could have left these guys off for now, but I'm going to come over here basically in between the two, and I'm going to come back to the one. I don't want an even space, so I'm just going to draw a straight line down on that side. I'm going to come over pretty much at the same height. I'm just going to draw another straight line. Oh, look at this. I am drawing a rectangle. Cool. So, here's my little cabin. Now, it's going to have a roof on it. So, I'm actually going to come down. I'm going to go over, and I'm going to keep these lines all kind of parallel. And I want to keep my angles. I have to pay attention to that. Now, if I had a bigger building and I was going back into the deeps, the perspective, and as close as we are right now, it's not what we're looking for. But on my box here now, I shouldn't even give you that square. Let's say we put a little bit of an angle on that window, because you're going to have to angle your house back a little bit. So if you look at this straight line, and you want to keep this straight with your, we could have started with a horizontal line. Where is our horizon? So I'm kind of adding that late. If you're more comfortable working with rulers and things, go for it. You can get, these are more of the guides that I have. I don't really use these very often. I kind of have forgotten that I even had them, but my father used them a lot because he was a technical illustrator, and I have a lot of his guides, and I don't know if you can see or not, but there's little strips of tape on one side of these guides, and the reason he would have done that is because if he was working with pen and ink or some type of more fluid, more than a pencil, even just to keep it up, if you're working with something more fluid like a pen and ink, or even your little Sharpie, if you ever see how it travels under when you do use something like this, a stencil, this is just a thin coat of tape. So what we're doing is we're giving a little bit of a gap between the surface of this stencil and when we lay it down there, that way it's kind of lifted that stencil up off of the paper, and so it doesn't allow the fluid to go traveling through. So that's just kind of a sidebar note if you're finding that in using something, maybe you were using this for something else and you couldn't keep that paint or ink or whatever from going under, it's because if you give it a little bit of a gap, it'll keep that from running. But you can use these if you want. Let's say I can even come over here and maybe I want to make another building over here on my horizon line. But when we're doing this, I'm going to pretend that this building is way far, far, far away. So what happens if I'm going to keep following some of these just so they look like they're... So that's an easy enough shape, don't you think, for your non-drawing skills? Now on these sides we can make, you know, some trees, but we're going to let the paint do that work. I'm going to take one of these stickers and we're going to hope it doesn't get too stuck to our paper. And if it does, we will have learned a lesson. You will find your papers are different. On the watercolor paper itself, because there's a little bit more body there, I don't expect it to stick as well as it was sticking to this watercolor paper, which is a little bit more absorbent. Okay, so I have my stickers. I'm not going crazy trying to rub them down. And here, maybe this is the barn. Maybe we have a ramp. So think about a place that you want to be. You can see, look at that. We made a door. Now we'll do that with our paint. Let's start here. We're going to start with the big, brilliant sky. And earlier, I was using my fan brush when I was doing this. So if you're, I'm sure you're curious, this is what I was using to get more of that vertical line on these trees. And it was also, I was just going with my fan brush this way, horizontally, and sometimes depositing a bit more paint than in other areas. But I did spray the paper in general. I wasn't trying to control any of the areas. So I do have the watercolor bleeding into the roof line, which that could be turned into, if this is a snow scene, maybe there's are a few little patches of roof where the snow has melted from. But we're going to use just a couple basic brushes. For you to see better, I will try to keep them, larger. And so this is a round brush. And this is actually a Royal and Langnickel. And they are calling this a 24. This is actually a Cheap Joe's round. This is a little bit more expensive brush. And we'll maybe just use this. I'm going to keep it with the less expensive brushes, just so you know you have that ability to create your masterpiece and you don't have to run out and buy all the best of this and that right away. You might want to later. Okay, let's do this. All right, we're going to move that up. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I don't want that sky to be the same color. Do I want to keep making things the same? I am dipping my flat brush into the water, my clean water, and I actually am just going to come along, and you probably cannot see this, but what I am doing is I am following those lines, and I am wetting the paper. Now when I'm wetting this much paper, this is when you're going to be starting to see the paper will react, because the water is absorbing and things are expanding and shifting. But it's good as a watercolorist to play with different things, like approach the sky dry, approach it wet. Right now my sky is wet and my whole background is very wet right now. Now I could take that fan brush, and I can also just keep using this straight brush here. And there's the fan one. Alright, I am going to begin with my ultramarine blue, because I'm going to be putting my sky in. So this is our ultramarine blue in this set, where I have a warm blue and a cool blue. I'm going to leave a little bit of space there in case I want to put a little chimney on that. Maybe this is my home out in the country, and I'm just about to bring in the wood, get the fire going. So we're just doing doodles. What we're doing is we're getting used to our paintbrushes. We're seeing what we can do with our paintbrushes, and we're just playing. This is not going to be a masterpiece or a whatever, but it's going to be a lesson. Every painting, I think, is a lesson. You learn something. You might learn that your masking tape is too strong and it pulled off part of your paper. You might learn that you have a lot more skills than you thought you did. All right, I am rinsing my brush. I'm gonna let that guy to just kind of hang out and start to settle in there. I'm coming in here to my warm green, the sap, and I'm just gonna give myself some background. Now I'm going for more of a nocturnal. I'm going to have a moon underneath my little sticker instead of a... But see, I'm kind of letting this green mush up into the sky, but I'm not trying to fill in all the areas, because once I lose that white, I've lost that white. You can do things with an opaque white paint, but it just doesn't have the same overall effect. Now, I don't know if you had noticed that this spot already had paint on it, but even when I came on top a couple times with dabbing it with the sap green here on the with the fan brush, it still reads. There was no white paper at that time. It was all blue, but the green will still sometimes kind of push and make its own way. And these are things that you can discover about your pigments when you kind of play with this. You'll start to see some of those characteristics because they can all act so differently. That's why we're just kind of doing some little playing here. Okay? So isn't that lovely? There's my tree line. All right. I am going to have a purple house. Well, not really a purple house, but because it's going to be an evening scene, and we'll keep the house basically white. Well, your shadows are going to be a different version of white, right? So I'm just going to make mine have a purple hue, or cast them. This is that mix that I make when I take my alizarin red, which is the pinker of my reds. I just put that right over on this side. Okay, then if I come in here, and you can see I'm not rinsing out my brush in between. This is the purple mix. So I'm not that purple mix. I'm not that concerned that I already had red on there because the red is part of that component, and we're just playing. So basically what I'm saying is that they all get along very well. Now we could put some of that ultramarine blue over here. And then see, I have it in even, see that pretty royal purple. So keep in mind that you don't have to run out and buy every single color in the world. As long as you have some of those base colors, you'll have a lot of options, and you'll be teaching yourself how to mix colors. Okay, so I have this lovely, now I've got a strong paint on here, so I'm going to actually come up into my sky a little bit more. There again, I've got this piece of paper. As you can see, it is starting to ripple. If those ripples were bothering me that much, I could go ahead and add a few more clips. And these are new. They're still very tight. And with adding that, it's a matter of kind of letting the paper push itself back out. So if I'm starting back in that center the same way I did when I was stapling, I'm going to want to take this guy off so I can let these areas sit down a little bit more. Now, if I had gone ahead and put thousands of clips along the whole edge before I even started, I wouldn't have it moving around as much as it is right now, because usually I don't really mess with it. I just kind of work around it. But things for you to keep in mind as you are working on your masterpiece. All right. Taking this brush just to add in a little bit of water randomly. I haven't quite decided where that's going to go, but we'll see when I put the water on. Okay, so I have that deeper purple in here. I'm just going to, and also sometimes, like, I don't know if you could see that, but there was a hair that had fallen off of a brush, and if you see that in your painting, you can usually just kind of flick it up with your brush again. Now this is another plus about this type of brush. It has a nice point to it once it gets all wet. So I can come in here and doodle as much as I want. Add a little bit of another color coming over maybe they're clouds. But I'm encouraging those colors to kind of blend together. And I'm considering my areas and adding a little bit of shadows and just a little bit of a variety of shapes, definitions. Don't forget the white is already there on your paper. So we don't want to just paint everything as if it's a wall and just to cover it. Then watercolor might not be for any kind of painting, might not be for you at least, or we'll just turn it into murals. But at the same time, if that's what you like to do, then do it. It's your painting. It's your world. You get to make it up as you go along. As you can see, I have it on my little board, and I can shift things around as I need to. And as you might not be able to see, we are going to take a little, let's refill our tray break, because I have basically run out of the ultramarine. But if you missed the exciting episode where I show you the excitement of filling a palette with your tubes, this will be a little bit of another version of it. So sometimes it's nice to lift up your clips and then just go ahead and put a little paint under there, then you don't have that big white spot. But if you find that this is a masterpiece and you're going to want to stick it in a mat and hang it on your wall, you're going to lose that little 1/4 inch around the edges anyway. Now, with those stickers, we're going to leave that on until the paper gets dry. All right. Next thing, because what I'm going to do is we'll work this one up into about there, and then we can switch back over to this and do more things with that while this one dries, because I can't touch those stickers right now. And I'm going to take a flat brush. And this time, actually, I'm going to approach this slightly differently than I did. Okay, where is... Sorry, I just wanted to keep that paint moving so it doesn't just make a big puddle. You are the one in control, so you kind of keep an eye on all your spaces as they're drying. Figure out what's going on. So now we have those nice, almost wispy. So lots of puddling, lots of paint going on right there. I am going to pre-wet this space, just this side of the house. Now, had I taken a little bit more time with my drawing, I would have given you eaves and everything else. But I'm not going to do that. I'm coming in here just for part of the road. I am going to make my house a little bit more of a redder. Just coming down real quick, real light. I didn't have a lot of pigment on there. Now, I could have come on with a lot more paint, but I don't want a dark color, so I'm starting out light that way. And as you can see, if I keep moving these big areas of really, really wet paint, I can create some pretty interesting shapes. Now, another thing that some people will get frustrated with watercolor for is because it can become very uncontrollable. And they'll say, oh, I wish I could have gotten it to stop it right here and there. And some people will use a hair dryer. You want to keep it on low because depending on how wet things are, you will push things around, and that will change some of the shapes and things that you're seeing. But I just kind of let it dry and do its own thing. But this is why I like to have something more portable that I can easily move and let gravity do things for me. So, I don't know if you can probably see how that's kind of dripping down. So, on this little house, if I have a moon here and I've got so it'd be like your sunlight. If it's coming from that side, you're going to have a shadow over on the other side. So, let's add a shadow to our little house here. We're going to say, come out a bit. I'm going to have an elongated shape just because I can make up whatever shape of my house I want to. We have cast a new shadow. And let's add a little bit of snowbanky action here. Come up to the road. Oh, well, let's see. If this is our red barn, now the red barn actually is going to have a little bit more of the light on that side. That is very bright right now. This little picture has just a lot of basic shapes. But see how when you leave those areas and you don't have to be as specific as you might think. And you can come up with a pretty readable picture. Think about your own house. Think about, look out the window and look at the neighbors and look at the way the eaves stick out from the edge and how that creates another shadow. So all those little nuances, and you begin to train your eye to think about, well, if my light is here, then I should have a shadow over here, or I should have this going on. All right, I'm going to put this to the side and let it dry while we go to the next step. Now, if I would come back to here, I already removed my little circle there. And on my windows, I'm going to add a little bit more light to them. And I'm going to use that warm yellow, which is this one. And I already have a little bit in that window. And that's already drying. So they're having some big wild party there. course, somebody went to bed with all the lights on. Now I was taking that same yellow, just what I had left here on the brush, and just kind of pulling that around in that space to connect a few things. And just because if you think about the shadows and things that you see in the evening, you're going to still see, that light of the snow, but it's a much different color than daytime. I guess I don't need to tell you that. I'm coming in with my big darker brush because I want to make my sky a little bit darker. So I just want you to be aware of, don't just, start a painting and then think, well, I'm done. Bleh. Don't give up on yourself. You could keep playing with a lot of these and just experiment. See now how the fact that I put just a little bit of that purple all through the back area there in just kind of one area. So I'm unifying what you had seen earlier. Because right now, like, this is all kind of, there's a lot of motion and things going on. And for this painting, at least, we're going for a little bit more peaceful approach here. And then when you're done with this, you can wrap it off and write a little note and send it to your friend and say, here, I was thinking of you. And I thought you needed this. And the next time I come to see you, I hope to see it on my refrigerator. Your refrigerator. We could put mullions in here with our little flat brush. Just tap it straight. And all of these, you can add little shutters. It gets trickier when your brush is a little bit wider than that area, but these are all good things for you to just play with, because you'll learn more brush technique or handling of your paint. Another thing, remember they say warm window, cool building. So when you think of that, because you're doing your masterpiece of the street scene, use the warm colors against the cool and see what kind of effects you can get. Can you get that? Do your Thomas Kincaid little cabin in the woods. Okay, I'm going to move this clip, and as you can see, now this guy doesn't have as many clips as I have over here, which I'm looking at these three, and I'm just going to pull some of that paint around. And, I was going to show you how to refill the blue. She forgets so quickly. I just get distracted. All right. Woo. Here we are with our little tubies. And I am almost out of this ultramarine blue. Sometimes I will clean that space and make sure it's all pristine, ready for a new batch. It depends on the color and how dirty. And I'm just talking about the cross-contamination. This is not bad at all, and I'm just going to leave it. So when I'm taking a little tube like this, I am squeezing from the bottom just to pull up a little bit of that paint. And I'm going to take our pair of pliers. And usually what I will do, and I can't do it because I have my little catchy pad here, I will take the back of the pliers. I just kind of push that paint up and out. It's just like when you're squeezing the bottom of your toothpaste to get all that stuff that's stilled down there. Just need to fold that up once. Now, I usually would just go ahead and this has been used recently, so it's very easy to turn. But sometimes if your tubes have been setting up or sitting on the shelf for a while, and you're like, oh my gosh, especially these tiny ones, you will feel yourself like, oh, I'm going to break this thing and twist it. If that's an issue, what I do is I put the tube into my bucket of water and let it sit there, because it means that you've got old paint that has kind of locked that cap down. So if you put some, just, stick it in your bucket of water, or I will take a smaller cup and just have the tip in there if there's like paper that I don't want to soak on the label. So I'm going to open my tube, and I'm just going to put about that much in. This paint is very fluid at this point, but as you know, and then the other thing too about putting the cap back on, take the time to make sure that you're not cross-threading. Don't just crank it on there, because what you're doing is, like this cap is a soft plastic. It's in the metal, the ferrule part with the threads that you twist the cap onto, that is much harder than this plastic. So it's easy to, what they call it cross-threading. So instead of the threads fitting together, you're forcing them to work against each other. And then you're going to have a bad seal, and you're going to have dry paint, and blah, 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 blah. So, and that's with any type of screws and things. Just make sure that you've got it set and seated before you start cranking down, or you're going to be sad. See, I'm just having fun watching that. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? She's so easily amused. So when you do have something off to the side drying, you can just kind of keep checking up on it. And if I wanted this to dry a little quicker, I would run it downstairs and put it in our oil room, which is warm year-round. The boiler room, whatever. All right, so that's my little sidebar. Okay, and then I need my little squeezy tube here. I'm going to add a little bit more water and thin out that blue so it's ready for me to use. And we have refilled our little tubey. Now, I'm going to take some of that brand new fresh paint. Now, the thing with these tiny, tiny pans is, and there's not a lot of mixing space, but I like the fact that this little kit has this other panel that you can use for mixing. Now, this is a very bright blue. but I tend to work with the colors and let them be as bright as they want to be to begin with, because as you remember from your color wheel, if you need to tone that down and push your mountains back, or you need to get something to read further in the distance, and let's say you do have this intense blue sky, well, if you use the complement and you add a little bit of orange, it's going to push that back, okay? You'll see that as the more we just play. Now, even though this is just a flat brush, you can move it in all kinds of directions, and it adds a little bit of interest. Now, I will keep my eye on that because I don't want it to not look organic, because I am up in the sky. But as you can see, as I add another layer, I can leave some of these lighter areas alone. And by putting a little bit darker into that, it's going to start reading like a little pink cloud there. Right here, it's kind of reading like a hot mess. And I am going to just kind of join some of those spaces and quiet it down. Now, if I wanted to, I could add a little bit of a cloud over my sky. I have a lot of pigment on here right now. See how dark that is? Sometimes I'll just dump the pigment elsewhere. Rinsing my brush off, tapping the water off. I'm coming back here. I just have clear water, and I'm softening that little line that I just put on there for my little cloud. Now, if I soften the edges of that moon, it'll read a little bit better than if you keep a real hard edge. But it is your painting, and you can do what you want to do. But see, I'm painting more shapes than I am, I'm dabbing paint on there. And that, it's just kind of another technique. And so I'm just encouraging you to play with little things like this. And you can build your own little world. All right, I think I'm going to let both of these dry because I will show you something else that we can do. But I'm convinced I see a little Church in the lurch by the birch. Don't forget, you can always pick up some paint if you don't like it. You can pick it up with your finger. You can pick it up with a tissue. I'm just actually going to pull that down. I'm not saying I don't like it. I just want to get a little bit more divide right there. If you see something that's, you know, kind of sticking out to you, or something looks like a hard line, just take a little bit of water and, like for instance, up here in the sky, there are only man-made hard objects up in the sky. So we want our clouds to read a little bit. So what I'm doing right now, you can see how I've got this tissue here, and I'm picking up the paint a little bit, rubbing it back and forth. I pick it up and I just wipe off the excess of that pigment onto my paper towel. Another thing I might want to do is just introduce a little bit of that color elsewhere. And that's kind of a, not just a, you might want to do it, it's a good idea to always kind of bring in those colors in more than just one spot. I'm kind of holding this up so I can see where the areas are wet. Oh yes. And see, we just kind of schmooze it around. Look at that. Isn't that cute? There you go. You just made a holiday card for somebody that lives out in the woods. You can be the next Thomas Kinkade, but don't drink. He is also another artist that didn't make it through. He was successful, but alcoholic. If you don't get that doo-doo under control and keep it there, guess what happens? All right, I'm going to let that dry, and we'll shut down for a second, and we'll come right back. Hold on. Everything has dried, and they're kind of looking the same at this point. I just wanted to, if we zoom in on this with the overhead, I just wanted you to see how the ultramarine creates all of these patterns, because it is a characteristic of that paint. So the more you know what your paints can do, the better off you'll be. Because this amount of texture or, you know, sediment and things, to some people would just kind of blow their mind, and they're like, that's not what they expected. Well, it's a lovely thing as far as I'm concerned. I just really enjoy it. But you need to know that it might show up somewhat in your pieces. Now, I'm using the same pigment on the second one, but you don't see as much of the granulation as you do on this one, because I've got more layers, so I kind of killed that glow that we're still seeing on with this, because you saw how the paint was laid out. It's not like I was doing a lot of layers or anything. It just saw the way the sediment settles. So now remember, this one a little further along. Let me move this guy up into, I want to show you just a couple more things with this experiment. To let you know other things you can do. Okay, so we're going to see how these stickers come off. Now, I never did use this one on here. I haven't even put any paint right there, but they're peeling off very easily. Now, let's see how we do with the circle. Now, sometimes if I have a sticker on here like this, if you find that maybe it's a little more stuck, I will come up, since this paper isn't locked onto anything, I have the flexibility of coming up, picking it up, and I can kind of roll it back a little bit. I picked up a little moisture there. I'm just going to dry that off so I'm not... Oh, and there's something to see too. See, the water was dropped onto this, and I went to blot it and see how much of the pigment I was able to pick up. And that is not something that is going to cause me any pain. I will just take another brush that's damp and I'll soften that. But I'll deal with that more right now. We have a blimp in our sky. We can deal with it. Okay? All right, so I'm going to kind of roll the paper back somewhat, because I'm not... Sometimes I'll take like a razor blade and I'll tuck that up underneath, and just to get myself started, and then peel that back. Now, it did take a couple fibers off of the paper, but it's not, it didn't lift the paper the way it can, where it's just leaves it all raw. So now we have a cool looking little moon here. Also, I wanted to point out with the fact that just leaving these areas open, when you look at this area, you can look at it as, well, there's some kind of greenery up on the side of the mountain. It's snowy, or it's just, the snow amongst the trees. Over here, I'm so even with, I just kind of kept popping along there. It almost can read as a fence. So when you, and remember, this is the indirect indirect painting, because I'm allowing things to dry in between my layers. All right. So we have this beautiful wood scene here, and I'm going to add a little punch to my windows here. I'm going to bring, whoops. All right. I'm just going to bring some daylight in here. Now I could go like a solid area of yellow, or as you see now, this is the number 6 flat brush that came with one of the little $10 sets. So I'm not using a real fancy brush right now. I can make mullions if I just pull my brush across and then leave those spaces. And that's if you're making that white mullion. My brush is a little longer than that, but I'm not going to worry about that because I'm also going to let the sun kind of shine through. I'm just going to pull some of that yellow down as if it were making little rays coming out of our little building. It could be a thing. I'm rinsing my brush. Now, I'm going to come in here and grab a little bit of that purple. Now, had I drawn this a little nicer, we have no real hangover on the edge of the house. But that's, thank goodness, isn't my final architectural painting for something. It's our made-up painting, and so we can change things and make things up as we see fit. I might even want to just leave that side of the barn just kind of open. So there's something for you to try. Now that I was pulling that down, the brush wasn't overly wet. I could add more fluid to it if I wanted to, but you could just get a different effect. And what did I just put on here? Yeah, okay, I'm still with my purple. And I'm just gonna make things up as I go along here. I'm gonna add a little bit. Let me grab some of this, the manganese blue with the Viridian. And I've got this teal. I'm just going to come in there with that. And I want to make sure I don't run out of tape before I show you one other thing that we can do with our fun little snow scene here. Because we can make it snow. As you can see, I'm just dropping in color. I'm not like saying, here's a tree trunk, and I'm just imagining the light and dark that you would see if you looked out. I should do something with our little, we could call it a cloud. I'm coming in with the same ultramarine. Just dropping color in there. Now, I will say, this brush is okay. You can use it. I would recommend that if you are working kind of in this like back area, that you work with something more of a round. But I also recommend that you experiment with the different brushes that you do have, and just kind of get to know them and get to know what you can do with it. And, you know, like I said, just draw a little square and give yourself a triangle. You got a roof. You can, you know, it's your painting, so it can be whatever you want it to be. I'm just coming down on top of this red with a little line from my round brush. And I'm just kind of creating a bit of a texture just to show you that this is a wood structure we've got. But I'm not going to draw not on this style. We're not getting all board by board. You can. I'm going to come to that little brush that I was just saying, you know, move to a bigger brush when you can. That I can come in here with a very light color. I have that purple again. And if I just come across and let your brush skip, there's no reason you can't, you know, bring in a little bit of a board pattern. Kind of tones that area down for you and gives you a little bit more interest in that area. Now, right now, if it's looking a little bit too stripy, why not just take a little bit more water? And I don't have to let the whole thing go, but maybe I just come in and soften some of these areas, or I'm giving them a little bit of water to smush around with. Okay, I want to make sure we don't run out of time. So, let's try this. Since we have a somewhat snowy sky, or maybe I want stars in my sky. If I'm just going for maybe some stars in my sky, and I don't want everything to get too speckly, now I have some wet areas here. I just need to check myself and see where I'm at. I'm just going to leave those. Okay, so what I have in here is a Winsor Newton titanium white. Oops. And a little Da Vinci. So that is also a titanium white. So I took the white watercolors that I have, put them in one of my little reused spritzer bottles. Right now I'm just shaking up the pigment to make sure I wake up all the white particles that have settled. So if you're not using something like this every day, it's going to settle and you need to mix it up. So this is going to give me a little spritzeroo. So I can control that by, if I want to put snow on my painting, I think I'm done. Whoop! It's a big snow cloud coming in. So there's something fun for you to do, and that's just with your opaque white. Now, the this set, the Cotman does have the white, Chinese white, and so let's see how that works. I'm going to open that, and I'm just going to put a little bit of it over here instead of putting it into the paint pans, because I usually keep the white totally in a separate container because I'm very good at contaminating it. All right, so here's our cool little snow. If you see something and you're like, oh, that's way too big, just stick another brush into it and you can reabsorb that, or you can break it up a little bit. So how cool is that? Kind of like the way all that is modeled over there. And all right, we're going to put this to the side because she'll just sit here and keep doodling. And where's my... Oh. Oh, she's tricking me. Don't you wonder when she starts talking in third person? Well, as I say, I used to work with a few people that had names for all the different versions of Deb. Okay. I just want to clip that on there so I don't keep sliding it away. All right. Yeah, I could do the same spritzing like that, but what happens if I don't have a spritzer bottle that I want to totally dedicate to one color in particular? Because I mean, you can change those. You can actually buy a lot of tiny spritzer bottles online, You can fill them with whatever color you want. But this is the Chinese white, and this is an old trick that I'm sure you all know, and it's one of the ways you can throw paint. And here's the toothbrush. I was losing that. I'm going to dip my toothbrush into the water, and I'm blotting it again. And I'm just going to, I'll pull this in here in case we zoom in. I'm going to tap my brush down into the pigment. I'm going to let it kind of stay pretty full strength at this point, because you didn't see me add extra water. Now, we'll know if it's too thick if when you go to apply it and it won't come off the stick, then you'll know. And then we have, you could use an old popsicle stick, whatever. And you know the old routine of how you used to just kind of pull back on the brushes. Okay, I can be a little bit looser with this. And I'm hoping that the additional water will, because right now I've got such a fine mist, it's barely registering. Okay. And just kind of play around with, you can get a box or an old newspaper or something, and you know, you don't even have to use your paint at that point. You can just practice pulling. And what I'm doing is I've got the brush downward, and I'm pulling across, and the paint kind of throws itself that way. So here we have our snow falling. Just in time for those holiday cards that you were going to make. You can now make a beautiful little snowstorm and send it to somebody in a warmer part of the world. And they'll be so happy. So some of these bigger blobs, I'm just going to kind of take them out and schmooze them around. That is starting to look like a shadow in the room. Yeah, don't forget, you can put those shadows in your windows. You can do whatever you want. You can hang curtains, reflections. This is a big mound of snow on this corner of the house. It started to slide down. Play with the viscosity of your paint, the thickness is what I mean by that. Because on a white, when it's, you really, really need it to be opaque, you know, take your brush and use it straight out of the tube, and then you'll probably hopefully get the results that you're looking for. Some of the whites can be thin, and they just kind of, you know, suck right down into the paper. But if that's what happens, then you know that, and you can kind of use that to your advantage. So that's all I wanted to show you. I just wanted to show you what kind of fun you can have just doing a very loose image with, this is just a lot of wet on wet, and we were just building around our little rectangle box with our little triangle pitched roof, and then we decided to let it snow. So I hope I have inspired you to go play, pull out your stuff. It's good to do this. It's good for your soul. It's fun. At least for me it is. It's relaxing. It's a meditation. Really, you just kind of let the paint go and let your mind go with it. So I hope you have enjoyed, and I hope you go out and do good things and spread positivity in the world, because we need it big time. So, peace out. See you later. Bye. Fade to black. I'm back. Yes, I am that person who says goodbye and then talks to you for another 15 minutes because I'll go, oh yeah, on the way. So, I was looking back on our two paintings that we did, and as you can see, I think they're kind of fun results. And looking at, I'm taking you up to the little camera right now. So if you recall, we got our snow using our spritzer bottle filled with some opaque white and the rest water, just loose. And then we have the other one, which I really enjoy also. And this one has a bigger splatter. And for that, we were using the toothbrush and the Winsor Newton Cotman Chinese White. And then taking either our thumb, we're spritzing, you're pulling that back, you're spritzing, or you could take a stick, pencil, popsicle stick, but just play with how you're spritzing before you start spritzing. Use just water so you don't spritz it to your clothing or yourself. Okay, so we have done that, but now we're done. We're like, oh, I'm ready to frame this, and we forgot to sign our name. So I'm going to show you a couple ways you can go about signing your masterpiece. And the thoughts I think as I'm figuring out where I'm going to put my little masterpiece. And I'm going to show you two different versions. Usually I will come in and I will lightly just write my name or my signature. And then I'll come back over it with paint using one of my finer liner brushes here. Now these are both liner brushes from the same series, which is a Robert Simmons Sapphire. And this one, they're both the S51 series. This one is a 10/0. The other one is a 1, so they're slightly bigger. And then I also have the little cheaper brush from our cheaper set. So I'm going to pick that one up because you probably have one of these before you have a liner brush. But as long as you have a good point, you can come on in there and then just trace wherever you have your pencil and just rewrite your name. And sometimes I go offline and I don't worry about it. I just continue writing with my pencil because it is so much easier to do it with a pencil, and you can get very compact and tiny. So there, this masterpiece has been turned into, what I'm going to do actually is let that dry, and then I will come back with one of my erasers. If you're going to use a pink eraser, check that in some inconspicuous area because sometimes it might leave a little bit of a residue. Also, this lighter paper that I'm using doesn't always take a lot of erasing and abuse. So but I can come in there and erase things. Now, I'm going to go back to the other painting. This one, because we were just using quick boxes and things, I could come in here and I could erase that line if it bothers me. I kind of find it cute, so I'm going to leave it. But this time I'm going to sign with a watercolor pencil. And I'm going to come back over to the same corner. And I don't have this pencil particularly sharp, so I'm getting a pretty fat line. You could sharpen these if you want. Later on we will do a couple episodes using the colored pencil. But now basically the colored pencil is a pigment. I'm going to come back over here with clear water, or I could do it with paint too. And I'm just going to, because when you take your watercolor pencil and you sorry, I'm fading off because I'm focusing. Isn't that a good thing to do? Sometimes I have to be quiet and focus. Now, if something doesn't look dark enough to you, you know, just either come back in with the pencil or come in with a little more paint. And you have signed your masterpiece. And we have used up the last 7 minutes of this tape. So, anyway, I enjoy our little snowy sheens, and I hope you had fun. And I can see one of these becoming my holiday card, which it's that time of year, and I figure I might as well say hello to you at least once a year. And so you go home and you paint yourself your little Christmas card or holiday card and send it off to all of your buddies and just let them know you're thinking of them. Spread the love. See you later. Fade to black. Oh wait, I'm supposed to call scene, aren't I?